Okay, as you want to buy a prison. On paper, it sounds like the worst business on earth. You house people nobody wants, in a building nobody visits, in an industry everybody hates. And yet, over the last 40 years, two American companies turned exactly that into billions of dollars in revenue and a listing on the New York Stock Exchange. The United States locks up more of its own citizens than any country on earth, around 2 million people at the peak. The supply of bodies was never the problem, the profit was. Here is the strange part. Crime in America has been falling for 3 decades. The prison population peaked years ago and has been shrinking ever since. Fewer customers every single year, and the companies that own the cells got richer anyway. So if you have ever wondered how someone builds a fortune locking people up, and why the smartest money is now quietly racing to do it to a completely different group of people, here is exactly how the machine works. The first thing you need to understand is that a private prison does not sell punishment. It sells a guarantee. When a state decides it does not want to build and staff its own prison, it hires a company to do it and pays a simple daily rate, a per diem, for every inmate held. Maybe $50 a head, maybe $80 every day. Multiply one bed by 365 days by 20 years, and a single cell becomes a remarkably predictable annuity. The land was cheap, the customer is delivered by the courts, and demand, historically, only ever went up. But the per diem is not where the genius is. The genius is in one clause buried in the contract, the occupancy guarantee. Known, less politely, as a lockup quota, the company does not just get paid for the prisoners it holds. It gets paid for the prisoners it was promised. A typical contract requires the state to keep the facility 80, 90, sometimes a full 100% full. And if the state fails to send enough bodies, it pays for the empty beds anyway. Sit with that for a second. The customer here is the government, and the contract quietly penalizes the government for having less crime. In Arizona, some contracts guaranteed the cells stay 90 to 100% full, so when crime fell, the state paid for the empty beds anyway. One review of these deals found that roughly 2/3 of them contained a bed guarantee, many set at 90% or higher. It is the only business on earth that bills you for the product it did not deliver. And the product is a human being. It never had to lock up. And once a person is inside, the meter does not stop. It just changes hands. Because that prisoner is now the most captive customer in the world. He cannot shop somewhere else. He cannot leave. He cannot say no. Start with the phone call. For decades, the right to run the phones inside a prison was sold to whoever bid the most. Companies like Securus and GTL did not win those contracts by offering families the lowest price. They won by offering the prison the biggest cut of it. So a single 15-minute call home could cost more than a decent meal, and the facility took a slice of every minute. Across the country, families were spending well over $1 billion a year just to hear a relative's voice. Then there is the commissary, the prison store. A tube of toothpaste, a packet of noodles, a pair of shoes, all sold at a markup the prisoner has no power to refuse, usually paid for with money his family sent in. Money that is quietly skimmed with a transfer fee on the way through the door. Every basic human need becomes a line item, and every line item has an owner. And then there is the work. This is the part most people never think about. The men and women inside are not only the customers, they are also the workforce. They cook the meals, run the laundry, staff the call centers, fight the wildfires, and stamp the license plates, sometimes for a few cents an hour, sometimes for nothing at all. In California, incarcerated crews are sent to the front line of the state's wildfires for about $1 an hour, saving the state tens of millions of dollars every single season. This is not a loophole someone found. It is written into the Constitution. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery, except, in its own words, as a punishment for crime. That single exception is the legal foundation of an entire economy. A business that buys its labor for pennies, rents its captives a phone at a premium, sells them necessities at a markup, and gets paid by the government whether the beds are full or not. And it rarely stops at the walls. The same operators often run the prison clinic and the vans that move inmates, every service the state once provided, resold back at a markup. Dollar for dollar. Very few industries on earth come close. At the top of all this sit two companies. CoreCivic, born in 1983 as the Corrections Corporation of America, the first company in history to propose running an entire prison for profit, and the GEO Group. Together, they pull in billions of dollars a year and manage dozens of facilities. And for years, they did something that should genuinely make you stop. They were organized as real estate investment trusts, the same tax structure as a shopping mall or an apartment block. To the tax code, a cell block full of human beings was simply rentable square footage. But here is the problem with owning prisons. Your entire business rests on a government that can change its mind overnight. And in 2016 it did. The Justice Department announced it would begin phasing out its use of private federal prisons. One memo: in a single day, CoreCivic stock fell by roughly a third, and the GEO groups fell right alongside it. Billions in value, gone because of a few paragraphs from a deputy attorney general. Then the very next year, a new administration walked in, rescinded the memo, and the stocks roared back to life. Up, then down, then up. Not on crime, not on real demand, but on the mood of whoever happened to be running the Department of Justice that quarter. The product is politics, and politics does not sit in a trust quietly compounding. It votes. And the captive economy is being pried open too. After years of pressure, Congress finally handed regulators the power to cap the price of a prison phone call, and the rates that funded those fat contracts were cut hard. Meanwhile, the shrinking prison population just kept shrinking. For a business built on more bodies and higher fees, both numbers were suddenly moving the wrong way at once. So, the operators did what any cornered business does. They went looking for a new customer. If the courts will not supply enough prisoners, there is another arm of the government that always needs somewhere to hold people: immigration enforcement. Detention beds for migrants are filled the same way, paid the same way, often with the same guaranteed minimums written into the contract. The companies that spent decades learning how to profit from a full cell simply pointed the machine at a different door. And they bolted a second business on top of it: the ankle monitor. The GEO group owns the company that straps electronic trackers onto people released while they wait for a hearing. So now they are paid when you are locked in a cell and paid again when you are locked to your own ankle. Incarceration with no real estate at all. The cheapest prison they ever built is the one you wear to work. Step back, and the paradox comes into focus. A private prison is the most reliable business in America, wearing the disguise of the least wanted. Guaranteed occupancy on the front end, a captive customer in the middle, near free labor at the bottom, and a government on the hook for the whole arrangement. The one weakness, the single thing the spreadsheet cannot control, is that the entire machine runs on a political decision that can flip with one election. So, how much do you actually make? A single mid-sized facility can generate tens of millions of dollars a year in revenue, at margins an ordinary landlord would dream of. Scale that to dozens of facilities and you get two companies worth billions, paying steady dividends, in an industry most investors will not say out loud at dinner. A recession does not free prisoners. A downturn does not empty the cells. The revenue just sits there, quarter after quarter, which, if you have watched any of these, you will recognize as the pattern. The most profitable businesses are almost always the ones nobody wants to look at. The cell was never really the product. The guarantee was. And as long as someone, somewhere, keeps signing a contract that promises to keep the beds full, it does not really matter who ends up in them.